now.
Welcome to the Sci Awareness Show. My name is Jonathan Rossi. Today in our virtual studio, I have Brandon Carney. The last time you all saw him, he was with me in Tokyo at the Mandarin Oriental and also the Tokyo Summit at the Tokyo American Club. Lots of Tokyos there. He was talking about translations, e-discovery in the context of legal proceedings. So Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, how you got into legal translations.
Sure. So I studied in college. I studied Spanish. My father is an attorney, and I always, the plan was I was going to go to law school with the language element. And at the last minute, I decided not to, and I ended up getting a job at a legal translation agency. And that was 15 years ago. That was just an entry-level position, and kind of now at this point I've done all sorts of stuff. And about 8.5 years ago, started Divergent, and here we are. So we provide foreign language assistance to the larger law firms of the world, corporate legal departments, and Law 100, 200, Fortune 10 companies, things like that.
So what we want to do is do some definitions here. A lot of people misunderstand, conflate terms within the industry. They use words like translators, interpreters, certifications, all interchangeably. Let's break it down. We're not talking to the language service industry here in our conversation. It's about awareness and bringing information out there to the general public about what it means when you're requesting for an interpreter versus a translator. So let's start there. What are those things and how that impacts the work that you do?
Absolutely, and that's a great, a huge part of what we do is just educating about what is and what is not and what is possible and things like that. So, the most common one, as you just hit on, was, translation versus interpreting. Translation is the written word, and interpreting is the spoken word. If someone would say, "Hey, I need a translator for a deposition," or "I need to have this document interpreted," it might seem very basic, but they are actually two very different skill sets. And just because you're a great translator does not mean that you're going to be a great interpreter, and vice versa. Interpreting is a very taxing undertaking for the interpreter. So there's two main types of interpreting: consecutive versus simultaneous. Simultaneous, you think of big UN conferences and things where everybody has an earpiece, and you see folks in booths, and they also work in teams of two, and that's because it is such a taxing endeavor. Simultaneous is, as the name implies, they're hearing what is being spoken and simultaneously interpreting it into a microphone, which then go to the folks listening. So it's really a strenuous activity. And so you'll see they work in teams of two, and then they'll go 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off, 15 minutes on, things like that. Consecutive is more kind of a courtroom setting or a deposition where one person speaks and then the person interprets, and then they keep going like that. Also very taxing, but a bit different than simultaneous. And then translation is, it's written. And so again, it's not everybody can know everything, right? And so a big part of translation is actually research. Are you good at doing research? Are you, really kind of doing your homework and utilizing the tools that are available, whether that's a dictionary or glossary or, just whatever the case may be. All of those things kind of coalesce, crystallized into what makes a good translator. Mm-hmm. So they are certainly, while it's all dealing with language, they are quite different.
Mm-hmm. So walk us through a scenario, a typical environment. A law firm may contact you and they say, "We need translation services. We have X number of documents that need to be translated." And what ends up happening after that? You get that call.
Um, well, so we start to drill down and ask for details. What language pair are we talking about, or language pairs? What's the volume? What's the underlying content? What's your deadline? Does it need to be certified? Do you have any reference material? Anything that really, again, will allow us to create the best product for them. But then we say, hey, okay, we have all these details. We know what you're endeavoring to do. Let's take a look at this content and provide you with an estimate and get a real understanding of how much work there is here to be done. And that takes into consideration all those things that I just mentioned. Any special formatting requirements. We get documents in these huge cases that are thousands and thousands of documents, and they could be a third or fourth hand scan of the bylaws of a company that was formed in 1924 or something like that. So we're not always working with just pretty Word documents. So there's a whole different element there, and so we really just review everything and then provide an estimate. And then from there, if the client signs off on it, we really start moving and putting it through our process of actually translating and the whole QC and all that stuff. And from there, it kind of dictates, depending on volume and all those things, it kind of dictates how our path forward.
When you're looking at pricing and translation, what's driving the costs?
Well, so, standard pricing for translation is on a per word basis. If you have to do anything kind of non-standard, right, there's hourly charges and formatting and things like that. The one thing in terms of cost savings, you want to leverage content wherever you can, if possible. You don't want to translate something twice. Obviously, that's just a waste of money. However, in these large litigation and matters and whatever the case may be, that could go on for years and years and years, and thousands of documents, hundreds of thousands of documents, that can be a challenge, especially if you're not able to bring technological tools to bear based on the format of the source material. And so that can be a challenge, but and then there's also the machine translation element is always out there, and a lot of folks don't know what they don't know. And as I mentioned previously, a big part of what we do is just education. Why can't you translate 5,000 pages overnight? Why can't you just run it through Google Translate or a machine or things like that? And so we have to kind of explain there's a time and a place for those type of tools. And right now, based on where the technology is, you're not in a place to kind of bet the farm with those tools in place.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it depends on also what industry you're operating under. Legal, medical versus website localization. There's going to be 3 different buckets. And
Absolutely.
I would imagine it's much more intensive. There's some important issues at play when you're dealing with large litigation matters. Medical, you're dealing with life and death versus translating a website into Swedish. There's probably a lot less writing on that website being available in Swedish than there is in a life or death situation in medical or in a litigation bet the company kind of case where you have hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars at stake. So,
you hit the nail right on the head. And there are, like I said, there is a time and a place for sure for that type of thing. And even in our space, it's a service that we offer, but really those types of tools at present really aid in pulling in a data set that is absolutely gigantic and filtering it down to, okay, here's where we want to bring in the human specialist, because these are the major documents, or we believe to be, the hot docs or whatever you want to call them, that we really need to have absolute, 100% top-notch quality, and we just can't trust it to a machine at this point. In other industries, though, it's much more widely adopted already. Lower consequence, more repetitive type things where, take a manual for an engine, right? That stuff tends to be pretty much static over time. And so, with some updates here and there, but that's a very good example of how you can do that stuff. It's repeatable. Whereas, on a legal case, when you're looking for bribery in some foreign country and, you have 100 terabytes worth of data that was pulled from 25 different offices around the world. Wildly different kind of set of circumstances there.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the people involved with this. Every time that there's a translation, we're talking people. So let's put aside machine translation systems, any kind of technology that aids the process, and let's look at the people that make up translation. People are behind translations, and you talked about things like language pairs, source language, target language, certification. Let's break down what these things mean.
Sure. So language pair, is exactly as it sounds, right? There's a source and a target. I need English into German translation. I need French into English. So that's really all we're talking about there. Certification. Certification is an interesting one. So we provide, as do most translation agencies out there, a certification, which is a document that is it is us as a company standing behind our product, and is not necessarily the actual linguist that's doing it. We also can offer that linguist affidavit, as we call it around here. And again, though, it's really just a document stating that, to the best of our knowledge and belief, this is a true and accurate translation, and it's notarized, and we're standing behind our product. A lot of people will come kind of same way we were talking about people using translation and interpreting interchangeably. They'll come, they'll say, we need to have this translated, but it needs to be certified, and the person that works on it has, the linguist has to have some sort of certification. A very common one is they have to be certified by the ATA. The ATA is the American Translator Association. But that can be very limiting, actually. A lot of the best translators out there don't necessarily have any sort of certification because they've been doing it for so long and they don't need it. They're great for younger folks that are getting into just kind of getting into the industry and things like that to kind of cut their teeth. But at the end of the day, there's no real certifying body in our industry, or one. It's a pretty fragmented industry, and it's a fairly young industry as well. And so there's not just one governing body, at least in the United States. In Europe, they have different, I think Europe and in South America as well, they have some different different rules, and you can be a sworn interpreter, or a sworn translator, and things like that. And they kind of go country by country. But here in the States, we don't necessarily have anything like that.
Wait, so let me get this straight. So there's really no such thing as a overall certification translator or certified translator, right? I mean, you mentioned the ATA, the American Translators Association. You can be certified as an ATA translator. That doesn't speak to the accuracy of the actual translation itself. You mentioned also linguistic affidavit. That really just says that the translator themselves, to the best of their knowledge and training, state that this is accurate according to their knowledge and training. But correct. Okay, got it.
So I mean, there is there is some level of federal interpreting certification, and some states offer some level of it as well. But the federal one, as an example, I think they offer 3 different types of certification, but they only offer it. The first type, it's really weird. They offer in Spanish, Navajo, and I believe Haitian Creole, but that's it. And then so it's just kind of a hodgepodge of stuff all over the place. And
you say federal, what do you mean? Like a federal agency in the United States?
The federal court system.
Oh, the federal court systems. Okay, got it.
Yeah, they offer those certifications, and then you can go down to the state court levels, and they, depending on what state you're in, or potentially what their foreign language needs are in that state, they have certifications there. So it's really a hodgepodge of things, and for folks that don't kind of exist in it every day, which is most people, they really don't know what's out there, and to say, hey, I need a certified translation, right? Like, okay, but you have to understand what exactly that is that you're asking for, So it's again, it's part of the whole process of really educating folks as to what's available and what isn't available.
Yeah. And I think since we're in California, there's a California court system does have court certified interpreters. So I think for people who
Yes,
want to look for court interpreters, they can query that database and it
that's right.
returns a number of interpreters based on certain languages. And I think the courts have this process. And I think it's some kind of exam. Is that right? That they offer that you take as if you want to
Exactly.
be a court certified interpreter and be registered within their system.
Yep, that's right. So you have to just, like, we're talking about the ATA, right? There's a test, there's an exam that you have to take, and then you have to pass to obtain those certifications and those credentials. But again, it's who knows what those tests are like and how hard they are and how stringent they really are. But you're right. In California court does offer, the California court system does offer certification. I forget off the top of my head. I don't know that it's in all languages. Again, it's probably Spanish, Chinese, maybe Russian, things like that. But it's an exam that you have to go sit for. And it might even be a multi-part. I think there's a written, and then obviously we're talking about court interpreters, so there's a spoken element as well.